Look, I got 2 free posters before seeing this movie, and to celebrate, I'm going to be a running man. Try and catch me now!
What is up, everybody? Random Random Man here, bringing you my review for the 2025 film adaptation of The Running Man in one take. Based on the Stephen King novel of the same name, the plot of this dystopian action thriller follows a man who joins a game show where contestants are allowed to go anywhere in the world and are being pursued by hunters trying to eliminate them. Going into this movie, I was quite looking forward to seeing it, as it is the latest film from director Edgar Wright. Now, he has made quite a few movies just in the last couple of decades that have grown him a fan base, including myself, that have enjoyed his particular style of filmmaking. He is known for the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, which includes Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. And then I personally took bigger notice of him with 2010's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which I loved. I was already a big fan of this graphic novel series that the movie is based on, and this is just about a perfect adaptation of that series. Then he also made The World's End in between Scott Pilgrim and this next film as a part of that aforementioned trilogy. He did 2017's Baby Driver, which was my favorite movie of that year and is my favorite film of his filmography thus far. And then his previous movie was 2021's Last Night in Soho, going into more psychological thriller territory compared to some of the more action comedy oriented stuff he did before. And I like this more than most people did. So in mentioning all 6 of those movies, I think that he has been on a roll, and now Wright was reteaming with the writer that he wrote Scott Pilgrim vs. the World with, Michael Bacall, and then this is the second film adaptation of the aforementioned Stephen King novel. Prior to this week, I had never seen the previous adaptation from 1987 starring Arnold the Governor, which, it's funny I mentioned him in this review because last week I saw and reviewed Predator Badlands. He starred in the 1987 original film, and now the very next weekend, a new version of another property he was previously a part of is now in theaters, at least here in the US, and pretty much the world over as far as I know. But anyway, the 1987 The Running Man film I thought was decent. It's not one of my favorite movies starring Arnold, but I saw the appeal in what it was doing and also having some commentary. But Edgar Wright and company were seeking out to do a more faithful adaptation of the book in comparison to that 1987 film, in having now this new version been released in theaters. So, starting out with the cast and their performances, we have Glenn Powell as Ben Richards, our lead here, the titular running man, and that is also the name of the game show that the character is a part of. Now, I have been growing to be a big fan of Glenn Powell in between all of the action stuff that he has done and even some smaller fare everywhere that I've seen him flex his acting abilities. And here, I think he is a real movie star, showing his leading man charisma and also him specifically in how this character is portrayed, being a family man. He is someone who joins this game show out of desperation to get money for his sick daughter and also to support his wife. And, you can feel for what he's going for. You also believe the physicality that he has in trying to escape all these people trying to hunt after him for the sake of entertainment in a game show, but also $1 billion is on the line. So Powell paces through this movie effortlessly, and there's quite a few players in the supporting cast that I do have to give mention to. Jamie Lawson plays Ben's wife, and I thought she did good for what she had to do, despite her mainly being relegated in the first act of the film. And then we have the likes of Josh Brolin, who essentially plays the movie's main villain. He plays Killian, who is the creator of this game show. In the 1987 film, that character is both the creator creator and host of the show. But here in this movie, the character is only the creator, and of course he antagonizes Glenn Powell's character to really do a bunch of stuff and also play everything up for the cameras as he is constantly being watched or searched after while trying to hide and win all that money. Brolin, with fake dentures, like fake teeth, and having this attitude about him that is so smarmy and just obviously evil, made his screen time entertaining whenever he did pop up. The host of the show is played by Coleman Domingo, and he is electric every time he pops up on screen. Himself having a lot of charisma as well, playing up to the audience and also commentating on a bunch of what is happening with all these players, or at least 3 of them, running around trying to escape those that are hunting him. And there's quite a few other people here that show up, like William H. Macy playing a rebel who helps out Glenn Powell's character early on, and all the other people that show up in between, I think, help play up this whole universe that the movie does set up. Which, speaking of the universe, now let's get into the writing, which again was done by Edgar Wright and Michael Bacall. What they have done here is, setting aside the fact that I've never read the book that the movie is based on, I have only seen the 1987 film that was previously an adaptation of this book. What they have done here is show that, yes, this is a dystopian universe that clearly has a dictatorship ruling the government, and, you know, the poor are very poor, the rich are very rich. The cultural divide between this population, I think, is evident. And when we see that Ben Richards is resorting to going on this game show, you see where he comes from, and he walks into a more affluent or lavish area, including the main headquarters of where the game shows are filmed and taking place. So we see that instantly right away. And I think what sets this apart also from the 1987 film that previously adapted the book was that it feels larger in scale. That previous movie starring Arnold the Governor, I think, felt pretty small in terms of what it was trying to do for being a dystopian set film, and that was probably the main thing that held me back in liking it more, because it was more of an arena type of show. Like, the characters are all dropped into different scenarios instead of having this open view like this new version of the story is doing. Because like I said, the people that are being hunted here on this game show can go anywhere in the world while being tracked, as long as obviously they don't get caught, or else they are going to be eliminated essentially. And they have to survive for 30 days and potentially win $1 billion, which obviously having a lot on the line here to go in between. And, you know, all the characters that Ben Richards is meeting along the way, you know, it's a very colorful cast, as I've mentioned, with a lot of the players. Later on in the movie, he runs into another rebel played by Michael Cera, who previously played Scott Pilgrim in the aforementioned Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So it was cool to see him re-team with director Edgar Wright for a film like this. He has limited screen time as well, but I thought that it was served well, and he was one of the highlights of the movie. And just everywhere in between what Richards is trying to do in escaping all those that are trying to go after him. The action here, I thought, was really well directed by Wright in how they are very inventive. It's not just a bunch of chase sequences per se, but it's also showing what environments and locations are being used to have us see the possibility of what Ben is able to do to get out of all of it. One that was highlighted in the marketing a lot was this tracking shot, or this long take, where Ben is running through a hallway while getting shot at, and then he slides into an elevator shaft, and then more chaos ensues after that. There's also a chase sequence involving a car going through the woods at one point later on, and then even just a few hand-to-hand combat sequences that are close corners and everything, I thought was all well done, I think. And with how the movie also goes on in just building this narrative in the world throughout here, I thought that in between what we saw of the commentary, given that this is an obvious take on what we shouldn't do to become an authoritarian society, was, you know, well implemented at first. We get little droplets or hints of like what we're supposed to see and feel, of course, given the villains of this movie. As the movie progresses, though, the film does falter in terms of making the messages very obvious and very clear, especially in the third act. There's a character played by Emilia Jones here who randomly shows up in that last act of the film that is basically a hostage of sorts. I mean, with how the government is like also telling lies and sprinkling a bunch of fabricated footage in between for audiences to view. Obviously, they try to control everything to give us certain emotions, or at least the audience in the movie emotions. And with Jones's character, she's a last minute addition to try to be a commentary on how the affluent are like thriving, and in contrast with the more downtrodden population like Powell's character is. And that didn't really leave that much emotion to be put here. And then at that point, when she is introduced in the movie really beats you over the head with the messaging and like, look how obvious this all is. This is obviously what we're leading up to, and just leading up to a certain point to have us back up everything that we had been saying before in between all of the action and Powell's character trying to escape being killed, because it's literally a life or death situation here. At the same time, though, I was still entertained with what was happening in everything going on screen, even if it was going into predictable territory. The movie runs at about 2 hours and 15 minutes, just under that. That makes this movie just over a half hour longer than the 1987 film, but it's paced a lot better. It moves a lot quicker. There's a lot more things going on here, because I thought that 1987 film was mostly stagnant, and there's some cheesy fun to be had with that film too, but I think this 2025 film adaptation has it better put with its stylings and how it is cut together. The way the movie looks, I mean, it gets down this futuristic dystopian setting very well in terms of the technology that we could see, and maybe we're not too far off from this kind of future. I don't know. The movie said it, not me, but the music here by Stephen Price I thought was well done, and just like keeping up the momentum and whatever else was happening here. And of course, just seeing it all string together mostly within the first 2/3, I think the film has it down to where like there's always something happening, and we really feel for Ben Richards, and then also trying to combat all the lies that are happening and being shown on screen here. I think that is what's going to be the main hook and the main pull for people to like this movie. Again, by the time the movie does reach its end, I think that the movie puts it on way too thick, and when it ends with the actual conclusion and final moments, I don't think it ended terribly, not by a long shot. It ends in a specific way that is difficult to try to get across too. According to what people have said in those that have read the book, the ending is something that is hard to try to adapt or even put down. So with how this 2025 film version ends, I think it does end in a way that, of course, audiences are gonna be satisfied by it, but with what was happening and just the movie crumbling to a point to where I was like, okay, the movie is really showing its flaws right at the end here. That's what stuck out to me. But to me, it also didn't ruin the movie completely, because I was so entertained while watching it in any sense. This doesn't say anything too new from what the previous film adaptation did, and even in comparison to other dystopian films, the messaging and all that is just very easy to try and copy and paste and just go through and have a lot of that be put on us. But I do think that this is a film that I still enjoyed overall. How would I compare this to Edgar Wright's other movies? Well, I think it's one of his weaker efforts, but when you have a filmography like his that I think is hit after hit after hit, it's gonna be difficult to try to have something that is capital G great with everything that he has done beforehand. But I think that this shows how this is a kind of story that, when played around and tinkered with somebody like him to give us a new take on it, and also showing his directing stylings, this is something that I think is still worthwhile in any sense. We've gotten a ton of adaptations of Stephen King's work just this year alone. I mean, over the summer, we got The Life of Chuck. Earlier this year, just a couple months ago, we got The Long Walk. And then, though I am not watching this TV series on HBO Max, the It prequel series Welcome to Derry is also catching a lot of attention too, and Derry is a location that this film is exploring as well too, given that, again, it's part of the world of Stephen King, and just everywhere that we see here, the movie moves all over, and I think that's what helps have it have appeal, and also just me ultimately saying that this is something that I do recommend seeing, especially if you're in for action, and This is what I get for doing this in one take. Car passing by down the road. But in any sense, this is a film that I do recommend seeing. And if you're into action thrillers, and of course, if you're going to want to see something that has a bunch of thrills in between, it's something that I think is good to view. And I think, all in all, I would say that my final verdict for The Running Man is 3.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of The Running Man. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.